The Ukrainian armed forces continue to outperform expectations with the resistance and victory against Russia. The death of Artem Nazbulen, the head of the Russian General Staff in Crimea, was the Ukrainian army's final blow to the Russian military. The loss of elite soldiers and numerous senior military commanders on the battlefront demoralizes the Russian soldiers, and we will soon present these unfolding events with striking detail. There is much unrest in the Russian army due to the soldiers' lack of justification and motivation for fighting in Ukraine. The Ukrainian army's desire to fight is put to an end by the outdated weapons used by the Russians against the powerful weapons of the West. Ukrainian forces aim for Russia's top generals and command posts with the help of American-provided M142 high-mobility artillery rocket systems. The Russian army experienced a nightmare as a result of the all-out countrywide attack by the Ukrainian armed forces in the south, which began with the power of the M142. The Russian army's command center was recently heavily attacked by the M142 salvos fired by Ukrainian forces 21st Corps in Harrison. General Artem Nazbulen, the chief of staff of Russia in Crimea, was killed as a result of a suspected M142 artillery attack by the Ukrainian troops. General Artem Nazbulen, the chief of staff of Russia in Crimea, was killed as a result of a suspected M142 artillery attack by the Ukrainian troops. Nazbulen was one of the best generals in the Russian army and a key member of Putin's army, who was also the commander of the 22nd Corps. The Russian army suffered a great loss, as well as a significant drop in morale following his death. On the day Russian General Artem Nazbulen passed away, Russian forces lost the highest number of soldiers since the beginning of the war. Ukrainian forces used the HIMARS system to destroy the Russian command center and ammunition storage facilities. Russian forces suffered a loss of 150 soldiers due to the HIMARS attack in Ukraine, including the high-ranking Russian General Artem Nazbulen. Thanks to this significant attack, Russia recorded the highest number of casualty soldiers ever killed in a single attack. The attack by Ukrainian forces cost the Russian forces 184 soldiers. The Ukrainian army established high superiority over its adversaries after the United States sent high-mobility M142 artillery rocket systems to Ukraine. The Russian forces decided to move the war into a new phase in response to the superiority of the Ukrainian troops. The Russian military is currently utilizing Europe's largest nuclear facility in the Zaporizhzhia region as a military base and attempting to manipulate the world by planting mines or launching missiles. In order to defend the Donbas and Kherson region, Russia simultaneously mobilized its forces that were positioned along the eastern flank. Russian forces intended to defend Kherson with more soldiers, but every Russian advance was thwarted by Ukrainian forces using the HIMARS. It is evident that the Russian forces are attempting to conceal how many of their soldiers have been killed. Oryx, who conducts independent analysis of war casualties, provided startling data and figures and examined the Russian casualties reported by the Ukrainian General Staff. According to information released by the Ukrainian General Staff, the Russian military has lost a significant number of weapons, including more than 1,800 tanks, over 4,000 armored fighting vehicles, 949 artillery systems, 259 multiple rocket systems, 118 anti-aircraft combat systems, 223 combat aircraft, 191 helicopters, and 740 operational tactical level UAVs. Photographic evidence provided by Oryx showed that Russian forces lost over 5,000 military vehicles and 322 pieces of equipment while they were abandoned by Russian soldiers. Images showed Russian soldiers fleeing from the Ukrainian forces before they even arrived at the front line, abandoning their vehicles. The Ukrainian troops took nearly 1,400 Russian armored vehicles, which were later used against Russians. The losses suffered by the Russian troops appear to be growing exponentially as the conflict continues. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Ukrainian forces killed close to 43,000 Russian soldiers. Some military experts estimated that 3 times as many Russian soldiers were injured as were killed in action. Soldiers who went to the Ukrainian front and returned to Russia after being injured are unwilling to go back even after they receive treatment. The Russian army has been shaken by this unwillingness and is sensing even worse outcomes in the war. Since the start of the conflict, the Russian army's performance has worsened. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, put a lot of pressure on his high-ranking commanders as a result of their poor performance. Vladimir Putin dismissed the Russian Navy commander after the flagship cruiser of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet, the Mosk, was sunk on April 14th following a joint attack by 2 Ukrainian Neptune missiles and 1 Bayraktar TB2 missile. Research done by British intelligence showed that the constant change of field commanders has greatly prompted the poor performance of Russian troops. The poor decision made by Russia's new field commanders may ultimately lead to the failure of the Russian campaign. Inexperienced commanders are more likely to make many bad decisions in the ongoing war. The Russian army will inevitably make strategic errors, given that about 100 senior army officials in the Russian forces were killed. Ukraine will undoubtedly benefit from this and take advantage of every chance to attack Russian positions. Russian attacks on Ukraine military and armed forces positions are accurate, which has added to their success. The Russian army has successfully employed its numerous precision-guided missiles over the past 6 months. Still, due to the Ukrainian forces' improved tactical and hibernation approach, Russia is now firing blindly and wasting its military resources. Ukraine is destroying Russian positions by using sophisticated Western precision-guided missiles. Russian soldiers who took part in the Ukrainian conflict and made it home claimed that following the Ukrainian forces' attacks, the morale of the Russian soldiers had greatly diminished, and they were more likely to make bad decisions that proved fatal on the battlefield. Compared to Russian sources, Ukrainian authorities were more transparent in sharing information about clashes and casualties. The Ukrainian forces made public statements about each operation they conducted. This information is accessible to everyone on social media and other internet platforms. The statements made by the Ukrainian authorities were also accessible to Russian soldiers on the front lines. When they learned of the unfortunate events happening to their Russian colleagues in Ukraine via social media, their morale suffered greatly. The death of some of the country's top military leaders and their subsequent dismissal by President Vladimir Putin significantly impacted how the Russian forces were organized. The frequent change in military commanders negatively impacts the Kremlin's ultimate objective of capturing Kiev. The Russian generals in charge of the western and southern fronts were suspended. It can be said that the Russian forces have lost at least 30 years of military experience if the figure is added to the list of dead generals. Since the Russian military's equipment was created during the Soviet Union era, it takes extensive military training for their personnel to become proficient with them. It is well known that the Ukrainian military employs cutting-edge, modern equipment. Western nations like the United States offered the equipment to help Ukraine stop the enemy from advancing even further. These advanced weapons systems have significantly boosted the impact of the Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines of battle. Fear spread through the ranks when an elite Russian army brigade was told to prepare for a second deployment to Ukraine. The military's refusal to fight shows some of the challenges the Russian army has had because the Kremlin has not officially declared war on Ukraine. Instead, it has called the invasion, which will soon be in its 6th month, a special military operation. According to the rules of the Russian military, soldiers who refuse to fight in Ukraine can be fired. However, they can't be charged, says Mikhail Benyash, a lawyer representing soldiers who choose not to go to war. Even though it's unclear exactly how many soldiers are unwilling to fight, these cases illustrate what military experts and governments in the West say is one of Russia's most significant hurdles in Ukraine: a severe lack of infantry soldiers. Western officials say that about 150,000 men, or 80% of Moscow's main ground combat forces, were sent to fight in the war in February. But a lot of damage has been done to the army, which has had to deal with problems with logistics, low morale, and a stronger Ukrainian resistance that they did not anticipate. Despite the efforts of Russian forces to replace the soldiers they had lost in battle with volunteers who had been hired to fight for pay, very few skilled soldiers were left to train them on the battlefield. The new, inexperienced Russian reinforcement will only increase the number of casualties on their side during the war. Following the death of the Chief of General Staff stationed in Crimea, the Ukrainian army has achieved historical success by denying Russia access to some of its key regions. Ukraine is more likely to reclaim its territorial integrity, freedom, and peace as quickly as possible unless it loses the will to fight and resist the Russian insurgency. If you enjoyed this video, kindly share, like, and subscribe.